Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. It's our final reaction today for Ahsoka. It is episode 8, The Jedi, The Witch, and the Warlord. I loved it. I loved it. Too bad it's over, though, because this was so great, and I cannot wait for more. This show, man, it's reignited that, Star Wars passion for types of Star Wars stories that we like. Very lore heavy, expansion of material, all of that. We're going to talk about all of it. Make sure you're liking the video if you haven't. Really helps us out with the algorithm. We'd love to have more and more of you a part of these discussions, and the best way to do so is to get us in that algorithm by liking the video. If you are new or just finding us for the first time, subscribe to the channel. Even though Ahsoka is over, we do have a lot of great content coming out. You can check out a video we just put out too called The State of Star Wars Lads. It has all the stuff we're currently working on, and the things that are coming out here in the next few weeks as we continue to push past Ahsoka into the future. But now is not a time for all that. Now is a time to discuss Ahsoka. Let's start our discussion right here. And as always, send in your questions, your comments, your reviews, your thoughts, all that stuff into the chat. We will get to it as soon as we get through our little review here right now. So make sure you're sending those things in. And if you'd like to support the channel via super chat, you're welcome to do so. It'll send your comment to the top so you make sure it gets answered on the show. All right, let's just start off. Let's start off with the main plot of this episode, which is the attempt to stop Thrawn from getting back to the main galaxy. We thought that was the direction it was going. Seemed like really the only direction to be going, because really the only thing that's connected episode 1 of the show all the way to episode 8 is the idea of preventing Thrawn from returning. Sanak, what were your thoughts on all of these incredible battle sequences we got and the moments that lead up to Thrawn's eventual escape from Peridea?
I mean, it really felt like an episode after you have like 5 minutes to breathe. You're like, okay, that was like a nice closed loop. Like, this is an Ahsoka story. We had a lot of Sabine, a lot of New Republic Hera stuff. Even Jason got a little bit of spotlight, but this was the Ahsoka show. And if that means that it feels like it's too force heavy for some people, some of these characters just are like they're all very good at what they do. Yeah, I mean, they're not the average person in the galaxy. So if this felt like everything just kept on hitting you action wise, story wise, you're like, everyone's just fighting and they're good at it. Yeah, maybe it's not your cup of tea, but for me, growing up on like the supposed prime of the Jedi, at least the battle prime in the modern millennia, is the Clone Wars, right? So we've seen Ahsoka do all this stuff. We've seen a Kanan who's mentioned so many times this episode. Even has like a nice little homage to him with Ezra's lightsaber. Hu Yang and him already have a dynamic. I love that, but such a cool vibe to have Kanan play such a role here in this story, to bring in the importance of these guys, why we care about them, right? Like, we've had Sabine sort of fresh restart. It's now feels like it's finally connected back. Ahsoka, at least Mando's been there, at least Book of Boba Fett, which are two big scenes. But Ezra, we had nothing, and then I don't know why he just feels like he just stepped out of season 4 finale and he just kept going. Like, Iman, hats off to you, man. Like, last 3 episodes, really, and you had to make as much of an impact as people who started in episode 1. Killed it. Just it might be a little too cheesy, guys. I get it. Some of the things, even like the ending, people are gonna be like, oh, of course, right? But nah. If we're gonna have these supercharged characters, I want to see them really push to the max of their potential as individuals, as a unit. There's now a nice little dynamic between Ahsoka and a Sabine that's really ready to commit to her train to really try to become this force user, do-gooder in the highest way in honor of her family or her own ambition. And then you've got Shin Hati, right? What's she doing? She's with the Camper Raiders, and then Baylan's on the freaking Mortis gods, like the statues of them. I was like,
Yeah,
and conspicuously, we're missing the daughter's head, of course, right? So I was just like, if you don't like that stuff, it's because you haven't seen every single thing. But if you understand why it hits us, so many of us, this is an insanely epic ending. Very beautiful with the music too. I love a lot of the music around Thrawn, especially. But it just felt very like magical. it didn't end us off with just like a cliffhanger. It gave us like broad strokes of what's to come. It felt very almost like a New Hope in its ending to me. Like there's just like guys, it's just getting started. That was an incredible win loss, however you want to take it, and it's just like it's an episode I need to breathe again for and watch just throughout, not just clips because this thing is so clippable, but just to see how it all flows together. This like almost fantastic mythical tale that Filoni's trying to really craft up in live action. Great start. If you're going to lean on what Star Wars made Star Wars from the guy who learned from the master himself, right? The creator himself. If this is like a nice love letter to that era, I loved it. So if you get it, you get it, guys.
And this is the beginning. I think this is something that Ahsoka is born out of The Mandalorian, right? We see her first live action appearance in The Mandalorian season 2. And so this whole project, Jon Favreau on as producer, Dave Filoni, who's been producing all 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, co-writing a lot of episodes. This just felt like a Book of Boba Fett style emergence out of The Mandalorian, a spin-off that was born out of ideas from the past, but yet had to be grounded in the story of The Mandalorian. But I think what this finale really confirms and shows us is that this is not that. This is a new beginning. It's a new start. It's its own thing. And where The Mandalorian now feels like it's supplementary to the story of Ahsoka, Ahsoka is going to be pushing the boundaries of Star Wars lore and fiction into the future, giving us the biggest moment possibly in the New Republic era of Star Wars canon. And I loved what it set up. I loved what it's teased, but for its characters, I thought the action worked really well here. You get a side of everybody. There are great character moments for every single one of these characters in this episode. Ezra, right off the bat, building an almost identical lightsaber to Kanan was such a sweet moment. Getting to hear Hu Yang talk about his time with Kanan, giving a little bit more to Ezra, who never really got the chance to hear about his master's past, not until he was gone. And now he's getting some of these moments from a droid who not only knew him, but knew what made him unique out of thousands of years of Jedi. That's a really cool moment. Sabine, the big one, she does have the Force. She is Force sensitive. Kind of saw it coming from the beginning. Thought maybe they were just trying to bait and switch us for a while, but I think after the continual presence of it, the push for it, every episode, it was Sabine, can she connect? Does she have the aptitude for the Force? I was waiting for this moment, and I thought it worked well. And it was exactly what I had been saying this entire show. I did not want Sabine to do something crazy that we had never seen anybody do before with the Force powers. If she has such little aptitude for the Force, a Force pull is a perfect thing to do. A Force push is a perfect thing to do. Those are simple Force powers. I loved that we got to see that unlocked in Sabine and that her arc comes full circle. The first episode of the show, Masters and Apprentices, that comes all the way back. And by the time this show ends, we do have the new relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine. Both characters have gone on massive arcs to get to where they are, and they have now become the master and apprentice dynamic that this show has talked about the entire time. On top of that, Thrawn was so good in this episode. I loved all his moments. I loved the way Lars Mikkelsen is able to give so much in such small little facial acting. I thought all of that worked really, really well. And his speech to Ahsoka at the end was so Thrawn, and I thought that was wonderful. Can't wait to see where that goes. And then kind of the surprise, like, standout of this episode, Morgan Elsbeth gets so much cool stuff. And honestly, that fight between her and Ahsoka, maybe the best hand-to-hand fight sequence we've seen in a long, long time. That was fast. That was kinetic. You could tell that there wasn't any filmmaking really behind it that pushed the action. It was just a lot of raw, real action, static shots, long shots, wide shots, all just taking in 2 great performers who were really committed to their lightsaber dueling, like you saw in the prequels. So that was really great. Death Troopers also amazing. The one shot to the Night Brothers or the Night Troopers having being zombies finally confirmed. But yeah, I love the homage to feel like it was an homage. Maybe it was just not just accident, but the Death Troopers book literally has the exact image with the same part of the helmet of a literal in canon Death Trooper now that we see in that moment, the zombie Death Trooper. All that stuff was really cool. Let's talk about for the last section here. Let's discuss the ending though. Let's talk about all of these things that were left here because we don't have any more predictions and speculation videos coming out for you all. This is our last point here to talk about Ahsoka and the ending of Ahsoka. Let's just discuss real quick all of these, all the ways this wraps up. So you have Thrawn, he gets out of hyperspace. Like I predicted, he's not going to fight the New Republic. I didn't predict Dathomir, but I figured he was going to reinforce. And we see, I mean, just the extent of how many of these supposed bodies he has in the cargo bay. Like, man, that is crazy. So it does seem like zombies are going to be replacing clones in this version of Heir to the Empire. Then you have Ezra somehow. That was the one thing that was like, okay, how did he just escape randomly? Yeah, he dressed up as a stormtrooper, but like he would have to get clearance codes and drop out of stormtrooper. That one was the one that I was like, all right. So Ezra reuniting with Hera was a good scene. And then Baylan, like you mentioned, Baylan with the Mortis gods. We see Morai finally in the show. Been waiting. That was the one when I did the characters who should be in Ahsoka, guaranteed Morai. And we hadn't seen her the entire show. And then finally, I got my confirmation for Morai. And that Ahsoka, being basically the daughter, is now going to be a part of this. The daughter's head missing. And then Shin meeting up with the Raiders. There's so many extraneous plot points here, but I think the two we should focus on particularly. So let's start with Baylan. That's the one that's most intriguing, where that's going, especially with the loss of Ray Stevenson. And then we can tie it up a little bit with Ahsoka and Sabine's final moment there with Anakin as well. So, Nick, what were your thoughts on the future of Baylan Skoll post Ray Stevenson's performance?
Again, it was just so measured, so assured, just so physically inhabited by Ray Stevenson. And we still don't really know a lot about Baylan.
Yeah.
When the performance alone can sell you on the hint, and that's really all he is. He's a hint, a tease. Incredible stuff. And again, like I was saying on my initial just bombardment of reaction, right? For us growing up with the Clone Wars and stuff like that scene hits very differently. But I think just for the average fan watching the live action shows, maybe just only the Ahsoka appearances, just because they want to be caught up with the biggest character around right now. Seeing where he's at, seeing how he's played it so far, that image is striking, right? So it had to work. There's a lot riding on a mostly CGI design, but I think it worked. I really did think it worked. It felt very Lord of the Rings-esque, which is one of the best parts about this choreography here. There's so much remix of things, right? But it almost felt like when they're passing by the Argonauts, or it was just it was like, what if you could be on there, right? What if you could be back in Rings of Power, back with the Numenorians on their island, right? It felt like that feeling, but they're like you just put some lightsabers and a cloak over a guy and just let him stare off all evilly, right? Or just caring so deeply, he's finally it's in my grasp. Yeah, I know some people are thinking where there are parts of his performance cut out. I mean, I'm no expert or anything, but I don't think so. I think it was always his finishing had to be symbolic that he is about to level up. He doesn't know that the reason the missing head is there is because an Ahsoka is basically reborn from the very tiniest piece of and strangest piece of Clone Wars ever. But as an average fan, you're going to see that and be like, oh my God, everything about it. So rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. Thank you so much. I know he at least got to see trailers and stuff with people, and at least the people close to Lucasfilm who are fans themselves, I'm sure, working on it or whatever, private screen, something. Maybe you got to see at least the premiere. Man, it's so sad. And ultimately, his story being that symbolic hint giver, now it's okay, this is a perfect place for someone to step off in the role and have someone come in. I would not mind it feeling like the recently deceased Michael Gambon coming in for I forget his name, but the first Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies, right? Richard Harris or something, or something.
I think it was Richard Harris.
I was a Harry Potter kid. Of course I know this. But yeah, no, it felt like, okay, this is the time. And it feels a lot more reasonable in the story. Like, okay, now we have to really get to know Baylan because he's going to be on this journey alone and all that. So yeah, season 2, Ray Stevenson being gone was not the ideal, but at least someone can step in and really give their own spin and it'll feel justified in the storytelling. But man, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. You brought us all the way here. We're sorry, but you're just stuck in a different galaxy now.
Yeah, it's too bad. It really is too bad. I'm glad I went back a few weeks ago and was watching some interviews that he did, and in the celebration moment he got with Lars Mikkelsen on the stage, really getting to feel that love. I'm glad he got that because he deserves it. He was incredible in the show. And while I wanted a bit more of his story overall in these last few episodes of the season, he was a villain that seemed to always be primed to branch off. He and Shin were the parallels to Ahsoka and Sabine for the first half of season 1 as they're going through that arc of their reconnection, and they both have kind of their rebirths and their reemergences. And here, once they get to Peridea, once Ahsoka and Sabine have kind of evolved past that arc, he had a secondary purpose that he does make clear all the way back in season 1. So that plot line, I wish got a little more in the finale, but I don't think the way that the show ended, I would have sacrificed anything for it. It is and was the extraneous plot line. And unfortunately, that does mean that most likely we don't really see any more from Ray Stevenson's version of Baylan Skoll here in the future. There are a lot of really cool ideas that can be brought from that. I mean, the Mortis gods being there, Peridea is set up to almost be like the origin point of all Force beings, and they've kind of given us clues with that in the future, and we can see where that goes here. That will be something really interesting to track throughout the show. And then the last moment we get between Sabine and Ahsoka, I thought was really sweet, and we have Anakin there, obviously kind of being the guardian of the whole show, watching over. I cannot wait for more Force Ghost Anakin. It might just be a Return of the Jedi style ending where we never really get that true Force Ghost connection with Ahsoka. But Anakin, we need those moments, finally solidifying why Hayden Christensen being chosen to be a Force Ghost for Anakin is something that was necessary and not just something that randomly being added in the DVD release of Return of the Jedi. So those are our thoughts on the episode. We're going to turn it over to all of you now for your thoughts. So keep sending in those questions, those comments, those reviews, everything you thought about the episode. We're going to run down through here, starting from top to bottom. But we did receive a super chat from David Fieldson. Again, thank you so much for your contribution to the show. We appreciate the support greatly. Diana Lee, Santos martial arts were so good. Out of it for a second because she was head and shoulders better than Rosario Dawson. I don't know if I would say it took me out of it, but she got a chance to shine. And for a character who does die in this episode, and a character who's in all the episodes, but kind of like the person who stands there and just gives exposition for most of this show, for her to get a moment with the blade of Mother Talzin, with that type of awesome moment was well earned. She had a great fight sequence in Mandalorian as well, and this was 20 times better than that. This was so good. I honestly was I was blown away. I was I thought the Baylan Ahsoka fight would be the best of the season. I was not expecting the Morgan Elsbeth and Ahsoka fight to be not just the best of the season, but by far the best I've seen in Star Wars live action TV, and maybe the best I've seen since the prequels. That was so good.
I mean, I'd argue from what we saw of it and the future of maybe not her being anymore in the universe, but being around to really help with the choreography to create this distinct style for a lot of these sword-based, more martial arts-based fights in this Mandoverse era. I'd love for her to be around because, yes, like you said, delivered. I felt like Filoni knew about her martial arts when he was doing the Jedi, but maybe he was like, I want to like let you be a performer first, right? Like instead of just being hired for your stunts, I want to build that character, and then why your character stands out is because of stunt work, right? So I like that choice being made here, because in the Jedi we don't really see anything of like real value in her fight. Like Ahsoka's like, oh yeah, I'm like, okay, like you could just finish her any second here, Ahsoka. Like there's no point in doing this. But yeah, like I got it. Like you wanted to make her threat, her significance, why Ahsoka's chasing her, feel important. Diana got to really live through that character. She definitely got a lot better in the show. I'll say, like I thought after the first episode, I'm like, I don't know how much we're gonna get out of her, but she's just so smarmy, right? Like she's just like, I'm living it up. Like I go here, I know things are gonna be even more powerful for me. My life is gonna be fulfilled. Whatever those grandmothers did to her, like, I know it's like that's how they get their like scars, and now she's like maybe not a grandmother, like a Mother Talzin like esque power, but at least like a full Night Sister, truly, instead of just being like a survivor, like a Marin or whatever. Now she feels like, at least even if it is a dark side or more evil version of the Force, she is like a fully fleshed, fully formed Night Sister in that way, and she gets to show it off. I personally thought maybe we'd use some Force like Night Sister magic that we see, like more like how they not like creating bodies per se, like a Savage Opress after his fight, but more so like, yeah, we're gonna see like the green spirit flames and fire, and we saw teases of it right when they're making the sword. So I thought, okay, like maybe she'll shoot out a couple to Ahsoka, or like during like a scene where they just done something crazy with their stunt work, throw in some of that Force. It didn't happen, but the nice part about this is she clearly has been around like our known people, if not actively participated in doing stunt work for films and TV shows or something, right? So she feels like someone who's actually gone stage training for like stage fighting, right? That level of understanding, mix it in with like a natural martial arts background. Yeah, she knew what she was doing. Rosario's probably just like, tell me what to do. Like, you're the master here. But a great thing about martial arts, having done it myself as a black belt too, I was like, one thing I really enjoyed about learning that is that it's a very reactive art, right? But then you really gain full mastery of it when you're being actually creative, being proactive. And I like that even if it is mostly choreographed, it felt like I saw like there were moments when Ahsoka took over and looks like, okay, Morgan's out for the count. But then Morgan brings out something else because Diana's like spinning on the round, pulling up with her sword and chopping up. Like there's some insane stunt works, insane choreography, very much embedded in what she probably brought to this, right? Rosario, I don't think was like taken out. I just think that it's nice when you have two lightsabers. You kind of get sloppy, and more. I mean, you want to make Morgan's final stand be great. Like she's throwing everything at Ahsoka, right? And she's like, I'm ready to die for the Empire, right? Like she knows it's a sacrificial play. So having this character go out like this, I'm more than happy. Like Ahsoka did not lose. She just had to take a second or two there. That's fine. She weathered the storm, but the storm was beautiful to see.
Yeah, it was. And then David follows up with, I meant that as a compliment for, Santo. I took that as a compliment.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
Don't worry.
Really understood it. And it was incredible, like absolutely incredible. The fact that scene jumped off the page or off the screen was not what I was expecting from the finale to remember that fight. Let's scroll back up to the top here. We have Sharank 244. Such a great episode. Yeah, completely agree. Glad you liked it. D'Angelo Navarro says that ending was crazy. Yeah, it was. And that was very it reminded me a lot of Rebels season 2's ending, where you kind of cross back and forth between every major character that has something going on. You weave in and out. You got the music playing in the background, kind of uniting the whole thing. It's really, really cool ending. I'm glad we got that.
I would say almost it was like they remixed and spliced together season two's ending, which is very force heavy, obviously, and then season three, where we have Thrawn using a Star Destroyer, bombarding people using his tactics, right? It's like a new immovable object versus like a unstoppable force, right? And we got to see like who would win, who would play out, right? So I really like that style of season two. While it was more central to the plot, I think, because it is a Ahsoka show, Thrawn has still got to show off some cool tactics, even if he is technically running away. he's just being very smart, and he's like, no chances here. Bombard. I know I've already jumped away, but bombard again. Like it was insane. So I like that remix a lot.
Yeah, the Great Mothers did not seem to really appreciate him destroying their temple, but I guess they're going to Dathomir, so they don't really need that one anymore.
Yeah.
D'Angelos, or no, I skipped a couple here. Where were we? David says, I'm very excited for more Iman Esfandi as Ezra in future Star Wars. Completely agree. He's so good. He was the one, I think we mentioned in past streams, for me, he is the one that out of all the Rebels characters, immediately that felt like Ezra. It's probably because he is acting the least different from his Rebels counterpart, where Sabine has grown and changed and had a lot of tragedy happen in her life. And by the way, we get confirmation now, finally, in this episode from Hu Yang about exactly what happened between Sabine and Ahsoka, which was a good plot point. They basically teased it the entire time, but now it's at least solidified what happened between them. But I completely agree. Iman has killed it as Ezra. He's going to be so good in everything here coming forward.
I think it was a nice choice for it to be a blue lightsaber. Like you could say thematically, yes, Kanan, same part. Going back to his original lightsaber, I wish if you managed to put on some like gizmo on that thing as like a last ditch escape tool against like the Death Trooper or something that looks like very much like his first lightsaber, I would have been like, okay, this is too much. Like I like season 3-4 Ezra, but I also did like the thing I liked most about that character in season 1 and 2 is like their lightsaber. He just does things. He's just shooting a gun. It's a blaster, right? So man, he is the same. You can argue that is a weakness by not being its own unique take, and before like finally connecting back with flashbacks, with like dialogue and some action, right, thematically. But I don't know, man. Like Ezra is like a character that you love and appreciate in the last 2 seasons. In the first two, like not so much, right? Like he was called Space Aladdin by many people online. People are like Rebels as a kid, all this and that. But the way the fandom reacted, obviously, we remembered more of the latter version of that character, what he went through, his connection to nature, animals, his final sacrificial play, the way he like protected his family that he created in the show. Like it's why it worked that we could just play the same character. That is a character we were robbed of when he was like his most in tune with the Force and being a good person and being a true rebel, like with hope and for the cause and all that. So I'm fine if he's in like a little bit of like suspended animation personality wise, and that's mostly because he's around Sabine and everyone in Ahsoka once they come. Like he just meets Hera, right? It's not like the whole New Republic is here. But I still want a Peridea trilogy of books from Zahn, and I'd like him to spend a little bit of time with Thrawn before finally separating. I still think he is hiding a facet of that personality. It just didn't make much sense to really examine that at this point. Like that's something that can be unique when he's back home. Yeah.
It was too much to do in this show. It was too much.
Yeah.
They had I think that's the main reason Ezra is the same, is because they already did a dissection of Hera. They already did a dissection of Sabine. They already did a dissection of Ahsoka. And so when Ezra doesn't show back up until the end of the 6th out of 8 episodes, you can't do a dissection of Ezra because there's not enough time. So maybe if Disney Plus would have offered Filoni 12 episodes, we could have gotten a little bit different Ezra. Still think he's going to carry demons, but he's for the most part overcome them. And I've said before, I think that in general Ezra, we see him overcome those in Rebels, because Rebels is his show. He overcomes his dark side and his demons in Rebels, especially by the end dealing with Kanan's death. Overall, I think a repeat of that arc might have been something too similar, but there's something that could be specific to Peridea that could have plagued him. I'd like to see that in the future. D'Angelo says, was not expecting to see Baylan on a statue of the Mortis gods. Yeah, I thought that was something that was very possible. I really kept saying Origin of the Force. Like that was something for me that this was going to, and I kept mentioning Thoyor, but in general, in canon, this is our Thoyor. This is what started all of that. In canon, the Mortis gods are the end all be all of the Force. They are the origin of the Force. They are the Force. So it is the origin point that we are talking about. I think it's cool. We're still tying it together with Dawn of the Jedi. I think this is they're going to be a part of Dawn of the Jedi for sure.
I mean, Dawn of the Jedi is the one that Mangold being the director, you can say maybe there's some criticism for him after Dial of Destiny kind of becoming this box office bomb. We both personally liked it. I think I like it a little bit more than you do, but I don't think we should just say like, oh, one slightly off like his high standards film should push back the film. But then again, we just had a writer strike. The actor strike is ongoing. What did they really get to like work on story wise, writing wise? I don't know. I don't know if Mangold just had ideas that he brought to Lucasfilm and they're like, yeah, let's do it. But if we're not going to get there anytime soon, it was nice that we got to see that Mortis was like, all right, we're giving you a tease, World Between Worlds. Like in a way, Rebels is teasing Mortis again without ever like truly getting into it. And then this show was like teasing Mortis without truly getting into it again. The World Between Worlds is like some intermediate. It's like purgatory or something almost for whatever dimension that these Force beings inhabit, right? So very cool to see that happen. Toyur, I think still can happen. It just seems to be now that if we're going to say Mortis is at least like the earliest Force thing or most important, most powerful Force thing in all of the galaxies, all the universes, all the dimensions, we should still have some competition, like some other beings, maybe a step before, a step after, more relatable, like a Rakuten Empire, an Infinite Empire. I still want like the Force and its earliest abuses to be evolved to that point before we get to this era that is more common to us, like the prequels, like the originals, like the sequels, like most of these Disney Plus shows are kind of hovering around. I would like that. It's just now like connect all the timeline well. If you're going to really build into this with Baylan, maybe explain some details of the old Republic, of Dawn of the Jedi, of maybe even High Republic before the Acolyte show comes out, make it worthwhile for us, right? They just gotta tease us and then be like, okay, we'll cook. Don't worry.
And I think in like a reverse version of Dawn of the Jedi, right? The Rakutans are like they're Force sensitives before they're like almost the first Force sensitive race, and so it's one of the ways they're able to gain so much power. But in a way, they could be from Peridea, or they could come after maybe once the Jedi leave and they branch into another galaxy. Maybe the Rakutans take over there. Maybe they're an initial threat for the new galaxy. Maybe it's why the Jedi leave. There's a lot of cool ideas that can be played with there. Sharank 244, Iman killed it as Ezra. Yeah, definitely agree. Great performance. Dom Jones, the differing opinion, says that was underwhelming. Too many sharks jumped. Cruiser, whole battery can't hit two dogs. Travel distance to the ship dock. Thrawn no longer a tactical genius. Sabine discovering uber Jedi powers. Well, I can't say I agree with pretty much any of what you're saying, Dom. No, not to disparage your opinion, but the cruiser thing, we've seen that in Star Wars a gajillion times, so I'm not going to mess with this show about small targets being to travel through massive turbo lasers. It's all the way since the original film. So if you have a problem with that, I feel like you got to have a problem with the entirety of Star Wars action scenes, as well as Thrawn not being a tactical genius. There's nothing really for him to do in this episode. I feel like he does everything he could possibly can to stop them, including multifaceted plans done by Night Sister magic, mixed with his own troopers' sacrifice, mixed with his only massive weapon being the Star Destroyer, constantly firing barrages while also trying to escape. He makes it very clear last episode. Time is the most important factor in this, not actually killing Ahsoka, Sabine, or Ezra. He just needs time to escape. And he gets it, and he wins. So I don't really see the problem there. And then Sabine, again, I know it's controversial about her having Force abilities. I know there are plenty of people not going to like that. For me, as a fan of old Legends material, I don't really care if people randomly discover Force powers, as long as they just don't randomly discover that they're in the next Anakin Skywalker, the next Force God. If she doesn't have any powers in this that most people have, when Luke is training as a 20-something, in The Empire Strikes Back. He's been training for 3 years and he barely is able to grab a lightsaber. Sabine at this point has been training for 10 years and she grabs her first lightsaber. So kind of the same thing to me.
No, it's fine if you don't like it. I think some of that also comes with the pacing. It is full on, right? Like I like the line that was there when Thrawn is just bombarding them, like you say, right? But what makes it work for me is that he's like, I know you, Ahsoka. Like I'm gonna just, I know your tactics. I'm gonna do all these things to like ensure my victory because I met the originator of all these ideas and as a battle tactician actually worked with him and being very skilled himself in thinking and logic and reasons and naval warfare. He does everything possible and makes his victory happen no matter what. Like he only needed the grandmothers. He only needed like a good chunk of that cargo and his star destroyer and the grandmothers. That's it. The man, relatively speaking, could have taken way more bodies. Maybe could have taken the naughty or maybe done some weird sci-fi experimentation or everything. Like just purge the whole planet. But he does it. He barely has enough for his troops, his ships, everything. He throws it out there because he's like, you know what? I got the essentials. My Night Brothers serve their purpose. Now I can like really do something. Because I don't think the grandmothers with these presumably long dead, like maybe they are, what is it, like the Dathomir witches, and maybe they are some of like the Zabrak, Night Brothers, right? That we see in Clone Wars, that we see in Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, right? I don't know how you can see that all that stuff happening here and then be like, he's not really being considered of any of this stuff. And I'm like, no, like it's because he's being aware with Zonro. He's aware of the things that he had an active hand in creating. He knows how to apply the best of what he did to what Zahn did in his books, and then what he did as like the mythological inspiration for the story, right? Like the general outline for the start of like this heir to the Empire, even though it isn't a Thrawn coming in and attacking and doing some strafing runs and just collecting some things. It is a Thrawn still going to a better position, right? Even if he did start off on the wrong foot here, he's like, I'm in the galaxy or not. That's still a very hard thing for you to overcome, right? You did it once. There's no guarantee you're going to do it again. I was surprised too that he also didn't say like, should consider what Baylan is doing, why he hasn't been involved in these affairs, what he's chasing after. I thought he'd maybe lean into that, like maybe convince, kind of blackmail an Ahsoka and be like, oh, why chase me? You got bigger problems coming up. There's something that mercenary is actually here for, that you as a Jedi should face or something, right? He didn't do that. He just played his game. He knew exactly what he wanted. He got it. So I think I was totally fine with that. And again, this is not like a T-16 shooting womp rats at Beggar's Canyon, guys. Like this is not for fun. This is a guy with all his assets, and tools, capability. He's throwing everything at them, but they're very, very skilled individuals, right? We have seen this in Rebels. We have seen this in Clone Wars, especially when a Jedi is an agile, capable fighter, and especially if they're on a mount that makes them naturally faster, they're going to avoid all these pot shots. They're always going to be a second slower. They have the force to keep them a little bit more in tune, moving around with their creature and all that, right? Especially Ezra. You don't think Ezra doesn't know how to connect to one of those beasts super quick? Like, yeah, I thought he was fine there. Thrawn just played his card straight. Again, you don't have to be a tactical genius to know when I'm about to get this if I just sacrifice a pawn, right? And his biggest pawn here, maybe if we're going to put it in chess terms, maybe he lost like, a rook, right? That's all he really had from Morgan. Everything else that he's being promised that Dathomir implies means that he made the right call. It's about winning the war, not the battle. He says, long live the Empire quite a few times in this finale episode too, right? He might even call this New Republic a rebellion like he does throughout the Heir to the Empire trilogy. He's going to come in with spite now that he has all the things that he needs to like start his war. He's got all the seeds and he's got quite a few weapons on his side. So still think he's a tactical genius personally. There's nothing uber about Sabine. It does feel like a very hot in the moment, like Sabine's like, yeah, okay, Ezra, you run and I'll push you, right? It's like, you barely grabbed your lightsaber. It took you a second. A death trooper was you were almost unable to breathe, and his mouth was all zombie flesh like, could have corrupted you in some strange creepy way. You barely lucked out, but she's like, no, you have to believe me. She full sent it, I think. So I personally still wanted her to be non-force sensitive. I'm fine with that because I think with a lot of the more fantasy mythological influence that Filoni's bringing alongside a lot of this samurai-esque swordplay with the zombies, very Romero-esque, like the way he's remixing his styles. I was fine with it being like, yeah, she has enough of the force because of midichlorian count. That's been a thing in live action. But also, if you're around like a lot of like fantasy views, there's people who have magic powers and all that, and a lot of fantasy stories, there's like a little bit of extra luck. Maybe you're like a little bit more predestined to like win a war or final battle and all that. Maybe you're improved by being around these people and training with them and all that. That with Ahsoka training Sabine for 10 plus years, like you're saying, for her to finally pull at that lightsaber with the trauma that she went through with her family destroyed, with Ahsoka, and her reason for not continuing training as being a fear of like what someone who's so hurt, so in pain from her like civilization's devastation, what she would do if she was fully trained. Ahsoka did the thing that a lot of you know Legends Jedi Luke should have possibly made the choice with, right? Instead of letting them go crazy and not keep an extra eye on them, she made a choice that even if it had to be explained away with dialogue, I think it makes sense. And that's why when she finally pulls it, once she's like fully in the zone, like, this is it. I have to be one with the force. I have to do whatever is needed. Like that image of her and Ezra at the temple, seeing the Star Destroyer in the hangar and like the night troopers like mocking them. That visual was so strong. It's why when she made that figurative leap, right? It's a leap of faith, right? She did that by helping someone else do that. And then once she completed that, she's like, no, I'm going to stay behind. So I honestly think it's fine. It's better than, if you're going to compare like early Legends, Dark Empire, right? Cam Solusar has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with Dark Empire. He's just there in Dark Empire 2, and he's like, yeah, I have the Force because it canceled novel. And then people accepted that, right? Like, oh, I guess he picked up the Force after like one fight with Luke. Sure. So if you don't think that taking time to develop this real push to make it like, will she, won't she, and when it finally happens as a payoff to her growth, her moving beyond her past, her trauma, like that's a key point. Ahsoka is like, let go of it now. We're on to something bigger and grander, more important to your life now that you can truly live again. Yeah, I think it was right. It wasn't crazy. I'm sure. I mean, I feel like Ezra also made like 75% of that jump, and he would have like maybe grabbed onto some like piping or something and pulled himself in. I wasn't needing Sabine, but she did something, right? And I don't think it was anything crazy. So right for the story, right for the thematic, fantastical elements. If you don't like it, that's fine. We're not gonna say anything, but at least maybe hear us out because we're hearing you out.
Yeah, this is a discussion, so we're going to give our thoughts
Yeah.
on your opinions, and we don't take away from that.
Yeah.
So keep sending in those chats. We'll keep trying to get through these a little faster. Apostle 22, I never could get into the show with the exception of the Anakin scenes. Felt nothing after each episode. That's too bad, Apostle. I'm wish you enjoyed the show as much as we did. Just honest question, not disparaging. Did you watch Rebels or Clone Wars, specifically Rebels? Because this does mean a lot more. I know they said you don't have to, but it means a lot more if you have. So I would like to know that, to see if that it truly didn't work for you, because I feel like the arcs for these characters work if you know the characters. D'Angelo Navarro, love the Undead Troopers. I mean, come on, is there no excuse for a Death Troopers inspired movie? Because that whole scene was awesome. That would be it. I'd love them to do it. We talked last night in our stream that we did. If you want to check out our video game streams every single Monday night, we play a video game. We're playing Republic Commando right now. We talk live about anything you want. I'd love them to do special presentations, kind of like Marvel has been doing, for random ideas in live action. Maybe a new way to connect to a Star Wars story idea that they initially had for theaters, but do them on Disney Plus. Death Troopers would be a really cool one. This is far better than a virus. Like I'm don't want a zombie virus. Death Troopers, the worst part of it is that it's steeped in horror convention, but the best part of it is that it embraces horror convention and horror tone. The whole idea of a virus, a plant-based virus, it's all just, it doesn't work for me. But I love Night Sister zombie, Force zombie. So let's do that for sure. That would be really cool.
I mean, I fully agree. I think just to mention, I'm going to drop a video in the chat right now, and it is for a YouTube video about George Romero's Trilogy of the Dead. And George Romero is the guy that I'm sure Filoni was most inspired by. Like, I know we were talking about the green glowing eyes and all that, very much what he did in Clone Wars, Rebels. I know we talked about how the book Death Troopers was very much an inspiration for that. But frankly, I think a big inspiration was these original 3 George Romero films. A lot of the movement was very much like, okay, we're gonna play old classic zombies as opposed to like some of the super fast zombies of like World War Z and Walking Dead or something. A little bit more classic in the vein of like how they came. We could hear like the noises and the voice. I'm like, okay, so we're playing in a little early zombie. I think I kind of got snapped out of it the moment they started running up the stairs because I'm like, you guys are just taking your time in that hallway, and then they were just running and jogging with their guns. But I like the convention of bringing this into the universe with the Star Wars flavor, with the remix. I still want more evolution of it because that's another thing about George Romero's trilogy here is that how he thinks about zombies, it is by different time periods of U.S. history and the world that he's influenced by, and like just what some of the negative qualities of mankind that he really tries to bring into the film and how people survive and move past that. I feel like he brought some of that element here, Filoni, by feeling like, okay, this is going to be causing such a problem in the galaxy. Let's make it a horror thing first, but then now let's evolve it. And I'm sure Imperial technology, maybe not a virus, but something to augment these Night Brothers and manufacture them per se with the older corpses that are being carried. I can see that. And how does that change the undead nature of them? I think will be very cool. So this is also Spooktober, so I dropped it because I think it's a good set of movies to watch during October if anyone else is watching a bunch of horror movies this month. But Filoni, definitely inspired by it. I saw exact shots there.
And check out our review of Death Troopers we did last year. That's a good one for you guys to check out as well if you want to see that episode of Legends Book Club. David Fieldson says, I loved how Hu Yang refers to Kanan as Caleb. Yeah, cool stuff there. I mean, obviously, always got to bring that connection back. He does refer to him as Kanan earlier in the show, too. So he knows, obviously, Ahsoka apparently has told him the entire story of Kanan. So it is a cool detail. Nikhil Madan says, goatee is absolutely insane.
Shout out my brother, bro. I'm going to see him later tonight. But yeah, no. I told him to hop in here. He's been trying to catch up with Ahsoka, so he's like, I'm here for support.
All right. Well, hopefully we didn't spoil the whole show for you, Nikhil. Beautiful Game Short said, so is Thrawn on Dathomir? Yes, he is. At the end, he is on Dathomir.
Yeah.
I
was like unsure for a second. I'm like, is this Lothal? Like, is he gonna come for revenge immediately?
Oh,
and I was like, no, it's Red. Oh, okay. It's like Mustafar. No. Korriban or Moraban? Okay, yeah. Fine, it is Dathomir.
Yeah, I was hoping it was Moraban, and then Enoch says Dathomir, but he is on Dathomir. I assume it's because it's a place of strong power in the dark side where the Great Mothers will resurrect all of these dead beings. Here's something though that I thought of during the episode. We don't know how many Star Destroyers went to the new galaxy or Peridea. There was at least 2 or 3, because if you watch the Rebels finale, you hear a bunch of the captains calling in. They're like, they're taking our ships. They just appeared out of nowhere and they took us out of orbit. So there was quite a few. So those could be trooper bodies, or could they be Night Sister bodies? Could they be dead Night Sisters from Peridea that the Great Mothers have kept in this temple, right? Because they take them from the temple and put them in the Star Destroyer. You would think they would be in the Star Destroyer already if they were trooper bodies. I don't know. I thought maybe they could be Night Sisters. It could be a Night Sister army, which would be insane.
It's tough for me because I want to say that he didn't go to Korriban Morban because he's a little traumatized by what Ezra did too. Like, no matter what, his whole life purposes, even if he was for the Empire more than the Chiss at this point in his life, right? Now he's like, I can't ever misjudge a Jedi again, right? And we know the books paint him with having experiences with Anakin when they're working together, seeing how powerful a Jedi as untrained, as wild. What is the word that they used? Bogan? Is it like a Bogan Jedi or something? That's the term that Baylan used to describe Jedi like raised in the wild, how Ezra was raised when talking to Shin, I think in episode 6, Boken Jedi or something, right? Like seeing a wild Jedi relative to Anakin, and who's wild in his different way but well trained,
Mhm.
and seeing him take it down, I'm sure he was like, nope, I'm not going to go to a place with Sith lords and arcane magic and whatever else that cannot control. Whatever he has with the grandmothers that Ezra hints at, like I can't stick around there, right? The grandmothers are, you know, able to work with him. I don't know if it's because of like promise of something or more so like it's a mutually beneficial thing. But I also think just like Heir to the Empire trilogy Thrawn, he's playing with the assets that he thinks he can handle, like Sabbath is, right? I think relatively speaking, I would expect this Thrawn, especially as vicious as he is, to be able to handle the grandmothers and use them as tools. Going to a Sith Lord is just asking for more trouble than you ever really want at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought it would be Morbin. I think
Yeah.
it's Dathomir is the place to resurrect a bunch of Night Sisters. Could it be Night Sister? I think that's a really cool possibility. Jared on TV, underwhelmed. No post credit scene again with actor strike. You can forget about seeing season 2 for a very long time. I agree with the last point. Season 2, unless it's hasn't been revealed that they've actually been working on it and that it's coming before the film and it was the next project Filoni was working on prior to the strikes. I don't think you see season 2 until minimum 2025 at the latest, early 2026, and that would mean the film got delayed another couple of years after that. We also don't know. I think there's too many
Oh
hanging
man.
plot threads for season or for there not to be a season 2 at this point. Like you can't start the film with them on Peridea and with Baylan's plot line still going on, and with the New Republic now preparing for a war, and with whatever Thrawn's doing with the the either Night Sisters or the Stormtroopers resurrecting them on Dathomir. Like you can't start it with all of that stuff going on. So I think Mandalorian season 4 is going to give us a little bit more of a clue on how much the galaxy is aware of Thrawn's presence. Does he start his war in that show against the rest of the galaxy? Is there still a build up to that? Does Mandalorian season 2 take place maybe towards or 4 take place maybe towards the end of Ahsoka season 1, where there's a bit of a build up on the Mandalorian side, maybe the more military side of the New Republic, where they're starting to look into the rest of the Shadow Council and all of that type of stuff out there. There could be some plot points in Mandalorian season 4 about that, and we'll see how much Skeleton Crew really connects to the rest of the show. But yeah, I mean, I am now in the camp. I know I've argued against season 2 a lot on these streams because they announced the film. Films take 2 to 3 years of your life. Filoni's writing and directing the film. That's going to take him even longer. And right now, the film's release date is 2026. So I still think if that 2026 release date holds, we are not getting a season 2 before the film, unless it's not run by Filoni. And I don't really want to see that. But if if there was always a plan for season 2 before he started the film, and now with the strikes it's delayed even longer, I could see the film getting pushed to 2027 or 8, and then season 2 coming out in late 2025, early 2026.
I mean, Disney has also been restructuring a lot of the MCU, spacing out. Like they were saying, special presentations are going to be more of a thing, and then they weren't. They're like they were going to cut back on that. That's the rumor. And then they're like, some of these shows shouldn't be shows. Maybe they should be combined or some stuff like that. So I think even though this is a very negative thing that has happened with the studios not agreeing to really support the writers just for pretty average requests until this long, and we're still not done with the actor side of it. Even if it is a negative thing overall, a positive that the studios can get is that they now just have more time to really reconsider things with their strategy, not necessarily what they're writing, but now like they're like maybe we wanted to fit in some of these Ahsoka Baylan episodes right into like a skeleton crew, right? Maybe we don't do that, right? Maybe we focus on like really expanding them out and save that later for now, like at least like a mini series of like 2 to 4 episodes, uh, just as like a nice little surprise drop before we get to the movie, progress their story or to another season, even if there is enough time for that, even if this film gets delayed. I am not in the camp that will happen because I think it feels very connected to New Jedi Order. The more we dig into Thrawn, I think that'll have an effect on the sequel trilogy characters and what their continuation is. So it can't be linked more to Dawn of the Jedi. It has to be more linked to this New Jedi Order film with Rey. So I think it's going to hold that date. It's just how this extension of the story will happen in this kind of time crunch is the most interesting part. And I think the studios, with this delay with the actors and all that, maybe are trying to space it out for themselves too.
And I am a little disappointed no post-credit scene. Not that I needed a scene, but I wanted some type of tease towards Skeleton Crew because
Yeah.
I've been saying for a while, I feel like the longer we get away from Ahsoka, if we don't get an announcement about Skeleton Crew over the next week to 10 days, I do feel like it's probably a 2024 show at this point. David Fieldson says, for a hot second, I thought the red Clone Wars era Lambda shuttle was the Havoc Marauder from Bad Batch. It does look a lot like that. It does.
I was panicking for a second. I was like, who would have this after we saw Baylan in his version, right? And then it's like, okay, it's not. Is it another prequel Jedi that's not Ahsoka? Okay, is it like someone else, like a Luke who's like taking over old Jedi tech and using it for
Yeah.
his? I was like, oh, and they're like, what if they just brought in Leia or something, right? Like she's, fresh off of her training. I know she stopped, but that doesn't mean that she's still not using at least like some nice ship or something from her days of training. So I was like, oh man. So I don't know. It was interesting to just have it be Ezra. That is where I think when we're talking the review, that was like something you wanted to kind of see more so than just cut to, right? So
Yeah.
I agree, and I think some of that also came from like who I was expecting to be in it too.
Yeah. I think they were trying to hold showing him escape for like the surprise of who is he in that moment. But I don't know if really, I feel like in general, as soon as it landed, I was like, that's going to be Ezra for sure. I didn't think it was going to be anyone else because there's nothing else in the show that could have possibly happened at that point to be anyone. Like it had to be Ezra. So it is a little disappointing we didn't get to see him escape though. Beautiful Game Shorts says Baylan is the brother, Ahsoka is the sister, Anakin is the father. Well, I think they're definitely setting up Anakin to possibly take on a role such as the father in this show.
Yes.
Like I feel like
Yes.
Filoni is wanting to do something even more with Anakin post-death, which I think is very cool and brings even more importance to a character that should be the most important character in Star Wars. And it would also give him a role that could tie into possibly the sequel era to where his importance and like his role in the Star Wars story that people have been complaining about his sacrifice not necessarily meaning as much anymore with Palpatine coming back, him being literally transcended into being the father, having lives as both Jedi and Sith. It would be really, really cool. I'm not 100% sold on Baylan as the father, though, or the brother. I feel like he's way too level-headed, and he's not manipulative. The brother pretends to be Shmi at one point in the show. He pretends to be he's an illusionist, he's a manipulator, he's like kind of a slimy worm, he's a snake, he's a typical dark sider. And I don't think Baylan has any of that in him. He honestly acts more like the father than the brother.
Agreed.
But what he could be is maybe a messenger called by the brother, or maybe the post version of the brother, or maybe Palpatine's the brother. Who we don't know, but it would be
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's tough, right? Like, what are they gonna play it as? I don't know. It's such an open canvas, and do they have time to really explore that? Is Ray Stevenson's role now, without him being here, does the replacement kind of play more of a lesser story? Maybe touched on way later before like the film starts. Like That is the tough part. I'm not very happy about that because, again, we feel so sorry that Ray Stevenson's gone, and it's such a shame that he couldn't build off of this incredible career high that I'm sure he must have felt so proud of, and he probably does. He's out there somewhere. But yeah, just the brother calling to him as a messenger, sure, like promising something, and then Baylan stepping more towards like, nope, I'm going for you, Anakin. I'm going for the head. Right? I think I can see that because he is vicious. I think he's cutthroat when he needs to be. He kind of let off Shin easy, and it doesn't feel easy, right? Like Shin is now this wild card. Like, will Ahsoka and Sabine connect with her? Like, will she chase down Baylan? That was something we thought a lot in predictions, but that definitely is a season 2 thing, right? So maybe now the emphasis is more on Shin and what she's doing. So yeah, even if it goes for like the father position that Anakin is kind of inhabiting here, I don't know. I mean, I like it. I know people were putting mock-up art of like Starkiller with Ahsoka and then Anakin, Vader. I saw that a lot, and that's cool. I think that was like mocked up during the Rebels days, honestly. But if he is going to replace like the poweredness of Starkiller in a more sensible way, and we get to get more of his backstory, we get to get a little bit more of his continuation of his story, I'm fine with it. He was a general in the Clone Wars, and he was physically imposing this show, so I'm not surprised if he was very powerful and we just didn't hear about him. I'm sure he's got his own grand story, like Count Dooku-esque in length at this point.
Dom Jones says, can't help but feel there was stuff left on the cutting room floor, especially about Baylan. The episode seemed very rushed, and the timelines were very Game of Thrones season 7-esque. I assume when you say that, you're referring to kind of the last 2 episodes of season 7 of Game of Thrones, where the dragons show up halfway across the continent out of nowhere to save everybody. I agree with you, but not about this episode. I don't think there was stuff left on the cutting room floor for Baylan in this episode. I feel like this was always the last shot of Baylan. I think if there was stuff left on the cutting room floor for Baylan in this episode, I do think you would have felt it more in the pacing and the storytelling in this one. And I thought for the most part, this episode was extremely well paced and focused. Last episode was the one I felt was unfocused at times when it went to Baylan and Shin.
Yes.
And so I think when you're talking about things being left on the cutting room floor, I personally think it was maybe the end tag that I mentioned that we felt like we were missing last episode, the way it just kind of ends abruptly with Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra reuniting. I felt like there was something in last episode that it should have cut back to. Honestly, the first scene of this episode would have been a perfect way to end last episode,
Yeah.
where you have Morgan Elsbeth walk up to Thrawn and she's like, all the pods are loaded. He's like, great, get the Eye of Sion. We're going to escape and get out of here. That should have been the last scene of last episode. I think it would have wrapped it up a bit more. But in general, I could see a lot of Baylan stuff cut from last episode. I do feel like that. I don't know if it was cut from this episode though.
Agreed. I don't. Maybe like stuff in context of what he tells Shin or what Shin is chasing after. I know she went for the camp here, and that's really her only role of like those riders. But maybe Shin is a little bit more aware of like the grand plan that our Baylan has been chasing after, hinting after, dropping like quotes on like inspirational quotes, and like I said in a previous live, and just walking away. Like it doesn't make sense, buddy. I kind of want to know what's up, so I'm sure maybe we got at least a little bit of that, and then that could be saved. Some things naturally just don't need to happen. I'm surprised they didn't go for the cliffhanger route to really refocus episode 7, but I also I don't think it was like planned that way. It's just it felt right to cut some stuff out anyways, and maybe that meant that okay, well, this moves just like a little hint to a different time, like Skeleton Crew or another Ahsoka Baylan appearance in a different show or whatever.
Yeah, I think the way they edited it, it's supposed to be kind of that thing you're questioning the whole time, and then when the show ends and it has that basically wordless tease, the fans of Clone Wars and Rebels are like, oh my god, the Mortis gods, and then we're gonna do that, and that sets up for something that you could make season 2 of Ahsoka, or some type of spin-off show that's not technically season 2 of Ahsoka, but it's basically season 2 of Ahsoka, and it stars Ahsoka, Sabine, Baylan, and Shin. I could
Yeah.
see that being an entire season of the show. And you could just kind of ignore Thrawn or let Thrawn be the villain of Mandalorian season 4 and then go into the Force stuff more clearly and how Ahsoka gets back in the second Ahsoka season. Beautiful Games Short says that's why we got the 2 Ahsoka Baylan scenes, brother versus sister. I could see that again. I think this was a part of your last comment before Dom Jones's comment. So we're supposed to have read it together, but I could see that. I just don't see the brother tendencies in Baylan, but it's possible. D'Angelo Navarro says, I've seen fan recasts, and I think I would be okay with that if Baylan has an important role in future projects, but I would be okay if they just made it into a novel if his story ends on Peridea. I'm completely okay with recasting. I feel like Baylan, as great as Ray Stevenson is, and he's wonderful and incredible in this role, and they're going to have a hard time finding somebody who's better. But I do think you can recast a role that we've barely seen. You know, he's in 7 out of 8 episodes this season, mostly in the first half. I do think you can recast him, and you'll feel it, especially for the first part of his next appearance. But hopefully by the end, whichever actor they choose transforms into the character enough to where you're believing they are basically the same person. And the second actor also has the benefit of if this character does make appearances in a season 2 of Ahsoka, a season 3 of Ahsoka, the film, all of these things, you're going to just eventually accept that actor as the version. Like when I think of Dumbledore, I think of Michael Gambon more than I think of Richard Harris. And I think that's ultimately what you're going to get to, unfortunately, with this character, but it doesn't remove the power of Ray Stevenson's performance.
No, I mean, film is, as long as we preserve it forever, right? Movie stars don't really die, right? Heroes don't die. Like, once you're on something concrete, you're there forever, and we'll always feel passionate about like that origin of Baylan for us, right? Even if it is ultimately in like 20 years fleshed out to before and after books, animation, whatnot, right? Like I was talking maybe like a Tales of a Jedi backstory, right? Whatever happens with him, right? We'll still have this like this is where the origin of Baylan taking his like first steps into that next evolution, right? That's what Ahsoka did in the show, and I'm sure she's got another one geared up. That's what Sabine is ready for too. That's what Shin maybe is not ready for, but she will have to eventually take, and that's what definitely Baylan is going for. So this being like a first season of that story, I don't mind. It feels very similar to me. I'm watching Wheel of Time. One of the main characters, Matt Cotton, got recast, and in the books, he's not really important until like book 3 and 4. That's like really when he starts becoming a character. But you know, they still have that like origin of how that character felt. Some of the great performance there, and then seeing that inform like the new guy stepping into his shoes and all that. I like that. I just think that as long as Lucasfilm also is like, let's respect what Ray did here, and really whoever comes in is not just like their own style, but the necessary step continuing a story as opposed to just like I'm just going to be my own thing. Like if they're very considerate of Ray's performance, I'm sure it'll be fine. If you just make him like totally different, total look and all that, I disagree. But I think Lucasfilm, for the most part, in canon, is a stickler for sticking to the details.
Beautiful Game Shorts says Ahsoka will make it back using the world between worlds. It's going to be something like that. I do think it's going to be something Force related.
It's going to be wild.
You know, it would be a little weird to just call the Purrgil again. You know, like I feel like that's lost its luster a bit, right? Like it wouldn't be as impactful. So in order to step up over Purrgil, in order to not take 10 years to construct an Eye of Sion, they're going to have to escape via some type of Force portal or something. And I'm all right with that. I like seeing the progression of Force mythology.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing more to add there. I'm just very happy about where we left it off, if this is what it had to be.
Yeah, I'm happy it's not rushed. I think in general this show could have been the typical kind of Marvel and sometimes Star Wars rushed ending finale where everything's tied up neatly with a little bow, and it's not. So I'm excited for the future. Loki was the best Marvel show because it left room for season 2. We did that with this show. I'm pretty satisfied. Dom Jones says Gerard Butler doing a Sparta again could be a good new Baylan. big boots to fill, as Ray Stevenson was the best part of the series. That is a cool casting. I don't know if Gerard Butler, for me, his acting prowess could quite carry as much weight as like a wise old mentor like Ray Stevenson kind of has. But kind of facially, I could see it. He could grow a cool beard. I don't know if we've ever seen Gerard Butler with white hair, but I could see it. I could see that being a cool, and he does have like a good physical
Yeah.
prowess to his acting. He does do a lot of action. He does a lot of fighting in his movies. So that's not a bad choice. I do like that.
I mean, I know he's had really good movies. He just happens to be a great dumb fun action star a lot of times. So that's his lane, and he really is great at it. I just
You're saying Geostorm isn't the best movie you've ever seen?
I mean, I'm not saying that, but no. I mean, all respect due. Like, I'm sure he's got a career. We can't say anything about that. Like, he's doing his life goal or dream or something that is so fulfilling to him. He's been doing it for years, right? Past the 300 era, which could truly be his career peak in the long run, right? So, uh, great guy. I know people were saying Liev Schreiber. I thought that was pretty good, but I don't know if
Yep.
Liev is as tall as Ray Stevenson. Because Ray Stevenson, he was a big lad. Like, even when he put the cloak to cover up the costumes during like their cast photos, like on their personal devices and all that, I was just like, this dude is massive. So I saw one today that I really like. I say Russell Crowe, because when Russell Crowe gets fit, and he can get more of like the old man fit, like he kind of already is to play Zeus in Love and Thunder, but now if he takes it a little bit more serious, right, with the chest plate and all that, but he's done the hair for sure. He can be this dark, twisted anti-hero. He's done it in comedic, he's done it in serious roles. And this is someone saying it having not seen Gladiator yet, right? That's so I'm saying I like all his performances already, and I still haven't seen Gladiator. So I think he'd be a great fit.
He would be a great fit if he was able to look like Russell Crowe of old. I think it would be awesome. I don't know how much he cares to do that in his life today. He's already won multiple Oscars. He's satisfied, but he would be incredible. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people you could choose for that kind of bigger stature for sure. But matching Ray Stevenson's line delivery also will be tough. Brandon Amiot or Amiot, maybe it's French, Amiot. Serious question. We all know that Thrawn was a massive part in the original Legends books. Should we, as a fan base, be okay with them recasting the original characters of Luke, Leia, and Han for the better of Star Wars? I feel like we all were, for the most part, getting close to being okay with it until they showed that, hey, we can make an deepfake AI version of Luke that looks perfect, like, or close to perfect. It's like 95% to me there. I still have my questions about deepfake for emotion, for human elements. That version of Luke is very much so Jedi Master Luke, very stoic, wise. He's not showing any emotion. And I thought it worked fine. If you have them as main characters, I think I would prefer a recast if you are going to make them literally main characters of this film. I don't think they will be. I think just the fact they didn't show up in the show at all, even a Leia, does make it seem like they're not going to be big parts of whatever the story is here moving into the future. And but I personally, I'm still at the point where I think this story is going to be so big. Excuse me. This story is going to be so big that I think we can have Leia, Luke, Han on a separate front of this war, that you don't even need to show them in the Ahsoka show or the New Republic film outside of a couple small moments. And then you get the good chunk of their story in a book or an animated show or an animated film, something that where you don't have to recast them. But I'm with it, Brandon, in the sense that I want more Luke, Leia, and Han. If Star Wars is refusing to do important storytelling in anything else outside of the live action TV, and it is the only way we get the Luke, Leia, and Han story, I am cool with recasting. It'll always be weird. In my head, I don't really think of Alden Ehrenreich and Harrison Ford as the same person. It's just never going to be that way. but I know that they are, and I think Alden did a good job. I'm sure other people could do a good job as Luke and Leia as well.
I mean, it's such an interesting thing that deepfake has become. Like, it was already being introduced by like, oh, imitating politicians and all this and that, right? But for the more broader audience, it was like, oh, Disney and Lucasfilm, a pioneer of digital technology, CGI, digital filmmaking, just pioneers in every field of technical aspects, would be like, oh, we can deep fake characters after already being pretty impressive in Rogue One with just purely CGI uh, version of Tarkin. The Leia, not so much. Then we got the Luke, right? Like you said, that worked for the stoicism, like just the small happiness after some stylistic way of like keeping his hood covered and all that. But I mean, I agree, Brandon. I think Thrawn is the reason why these characters are still important to Star Wars today. It's why Star Wars continued. Having them be limited to like arguably a lesser medium would suck. I think a happy medium for me would be taking the technology, making like deep face masks for a live action actor who's pretty close already. They already are doing that, but like maybe get someone truly as close as possible. Like if they have to, and I mean Hamill has been fine with it too, but if they have to, like I know all back in the day Sebastian Stan was mocked up. He doesn't look like that. It was kind of tweaked to match the face, but you can do like that couple dots just to make him like a little bit of an older Luke, maybe closer to a Hamill of like the 90s or something, and still play into it being a totally different character. I think that brings up like the ethics question of like, is that really a performance anymore? And it's like the whole reason why motion capture has been such a controversial thing. Like Andy Serkis, as famous as he is in Star Wars for One Way Out, he's more famous to the general public for right. Like that's his character. That is his legacy right there. And you know, doing that with like a half version of it on a different person who is still acting, who is delivering those lines, who is emoting, will that work? I don't know. And if they do that, I would think like a streaming movie as opposed to like a show to make it feel like it's a little bit more important than that TV show that you've been told to watch. Like this is like the main cast with real actors and their own story front of working against Thrawn, right? Making sure he stays away initially while Mando could still be its own silly thing instead of just hunting Imperials or whatever, right? Maybe there were rumors people were saying of like 3 small short films or something of each original trilogy cast member, and I was like, I don't know if that'll work, but make a movie with a recast that's only streaming, a little lower budget, but still has some cool moments with them. Yeah, I really wouldn't mind that.
It would be interesting. It would be quite cool. All right, moving on to D'Angelo Navarro. What was first just a dream has become a frightening new reality. Abeloth could be coming to the Star Wars galaxy. Okay, Abeloth. It is possible because of her connection to the Mortis gods, obviously. But I feel like at this point, with what we've done with canon, with what Dave Filoni's most of his lore has been around the Mortis gods, his reintroduction of them in Rebels, all of the stuff he's done with them. I feel like at this point, Abeloth might be just something a little bit too weird, a little bit too big to suddenly introduce in this. If you do want to go back in books and try to expand the mythology, I think it's possible still. I just think that concept in general, like I still don't think we're going to see the Morse gods as like a major role of this story, right? They're going to be symbolic. They've been symbolic in Rebels, and they are going to be symbolic in this show. Maybe you get a couple moments of flashbacks or moments of them in an episode, but they're not going to be the centerpiece of a story. And so I don't know if bringing Abeloth in would make too much sense for the story being told here.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing about this show is that it is like the first real step towards a story that will have consequence to the galaxy, to this time period, this first decade in the New Republic. But we still have 2 more to go, and then we have to see how Luke and everyone is like, why Anakin Hayden Christensen is not part of the filmmaking, at least of even episode 9. We just hear his voice. That would have been a great opportunity to have him like show up and like help Ben Solo come up, right? And like, oh, okay, here's a moment that the Skywalker line is uplifted, the last Skywalker, the rise of Skywalker, right? I thought that was gonna happen, and it didn't. There's edits of like people helping out Rey before she, and that would make way more sense if then we saw like that ending happen, and you're like, well, she was aided by Anakin. Anakin came to her, fully supported her, right? Like that would have been a great thematic ending, and it's not there. And I think that's very interesting that not having that major part of the prequels that is something that JJ introduced in episode 7 and Ryan didn't really play around with, but JJ had full opportunity to play around with again, and he just didn't. That when now we have to question like how long is this plan for like the Sith Eternal to affect Anakin? Because right now he's here, he's peaceful, he taught his lesson. Ahsoka and him haven't had like a full conversation about the Darth Vader turn of his yet, but they're surely gonna have more in the future. But then we see him and he's like, he's happy, he's fine. Shadow the Sith Anakin, like 15 years from now, he saves his son, and then he's just like in pain and like something is hurting him, right? And he just kind of disappears with like a very cryptic, almost heir to the Empire, Obi-Wan, like final embrace to Luke. Like people forget that. Like Legends dropped Kenobi fast, right? So for Anakin in canon to be like, nope, he's going to stick around for a while. Okay, but then why specifically is he missing in those 3 films? I feel like
Mhm.
that is like the first hint that we've gotten here. Like we're going to play around with Hayden as much as possible, let him age into the role and all that. But you know, it's gonna be tough. I don't know if Abeloth fits in with him. Abeloth is a creation based on the Mortis arc by someone who, like us, was very intrigued by many people, and was like, my book series, which has several authors, is going to play around with this topic. And Faith of the Jedi has some great things, but as a very late Legends era book series, it is weird. Like it starts really cool, following what Jason does, like before he becomes Darth Caedus, but then
Mhm.
it kind of just goes into like, okay, we're just kind of doing our own like Star Wars Legacy before Star Wars Legacy sort of feeling, and then Abeloth is just like, well, we don't know everything about you, Mortis, yet in Star Wars, the Clone Wars either. We just got like a first glimpse, and they're already like writing stuff with her in it, but not in the experience of that show, right? So it was like, okay. So I'm glad that Legends authors took the movies and made some great stories like Zahn did, but later canon with Filoni and George working did not line up at all, and they were constantly like breaking other authors like the Republic Commando, Karen Traviss. Like her books were just like nullified completely by different character deaths and all that. So Abeloth just doesn't work for me, especially aesthetically. I just don't like her aesthetic. I think it has to be something. If you're going to make her an aberration, make her something that feels as like ethereal or like twisted and dark, like fallen angel, right? As opposed to just monstrous woman who's pretty and then just has like tentacles and all that stuff. So that more than anything, if that's gonna happen, that needs to be changed. But again, what Baylan is doing is different. He's kind of going for Anakin. It'd be very interesting if Anakin almost has these like force fights with Baylan, with whatever he's trying to send it into, whatever power he's trying to capture. You don't stand on the father's hand and not feel like, oh, I am the next version. I am the one who's going to take over these steps. He's very self-important to him, right? So I want to see that actually happen. And where Abeloth fits in is not a lot of space.
He seems like a messenger of somebody he thinks could be contacting him. That's why I think the son could be manipulating him, but it's not. I don't think he is going to be a member of the Morris gods. So Philly Dilly says, which was better, this or Andor? That is a good question because I think I'd have to rewatch. I've watched every episode of Ahsoka except this one twice, at least. Some of them 3 times, and I would have to do like a full binge of this season to really compare it to other seasons. But off the bat, I do feel like it is between season 1 of Andor and the season 1 of Ahsoka. Like those two have been my favorite, even better than Mandalorian season 2 because there are a few episodes in that season that I didn't love. So I don't know. Andor, I would say, is still a better show. I think overall, the pacing, the arcs, the characters, everything gets a little deeper, and it's more of an experimental side of Star Wars we've never seen before. However, just like I said with Mandalorian season 2, I'll take this all day over watching Andor. I love this type of Star Wars. This is my favorite part of Star Wars. The Force stuff, dealing with Jedi, dealing with dark side, dealing with a character as big and bad as Thrawn. That type of epicness to Star Wars, I will take over Andor any day of the week. But I could definitely see the argument for Andor being the better show, and I might agree with you. But we haven't seen either of these shows wrap up. So we'll see when we get Andor season 2 and we get Ahsoka season 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, we loved Andor. Like, go back to our reactions. We loved it. Like, that speech down in the lower levels of Coruscant, you know, just for a new dawn that I won't see the light of, right? Like, just, incredible acting by Mr. Skarsgård. Like just the performances of that show. They're acting, right? And you can say sometimes Star Wars is like a roller coaster. You step on and you kind of play the role, kind of play with the tropes. No, like we got to build off of like some of the more unique aspects of Rogue One. Literally stuff that Tony Gilroy has hinted at, like reworking like Andor's entrance in the film and all that. He built that out with that character, and it felt like a stupid idea for so many of us to be like, "Why do we care about Andor?" Right? This is Cassian. Who's that guy? He just dies. He's just kind of like moping, has to kill stuff, right? But then to use him as like our ground floor to a lot of these different stories, still tie him in, have them all be like connected to each other. The Mon Mothma angle was great. Ian was a little disconnected. It's awesome, right? Uh, but then also seeing a Mon Mothma here in this storytelling, I'm like, I like this Mon Mothma too, where privately she's more of a Leia, but publicly she has to play more of the game. I like that without getting to like the heaviness of the sacrifices that she had to make in the rebellion. Like there's a place for both of these stories. It makes sense that in this time period you want the common man without the force, without any hope of like the past galaxy government coming to power. How do you struggle against it? How do you start that? And it makes sense for the story. So I love it for that reason. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of like crazy force users here. What are they going to all do together? And other people who aren't force users, how are they going to counteract that? That is the Star Wars formula. I think Filoni was raised on that by George Lucas, and he definitely has a love for it in a way that, like, you know, Lucas might have been tired of Star Wars by the end and everyone's reception. Filoni loves every part of Star Wars. He literally interned on the sequel films, and people are like, he's going to like rewrite the sequels and all that. He's not, but he's also like telling the stories that he grew up on, and he wants to continue that Star Wars flavor of the creator himself, right? But there's a place for Tony Gilroy. There's a place for all these other Star Wars stories. We're saying be more experimentative, like in our stream yesterday, in like these like small animated films or live action shorts or whatever on Disney Plus. Go for it. But someone can still do this stuff, right? So I love it more that because it is familiar. I'm sure over time, once like an old Republic and a High Republic is really expanded out, Dawn of the Jedi comes, I'll be very happy to explore just different Star Wars as opposed to just like a second coming that is just as wonderful as the first coming of Star Wars was for so many of us.
David Fieldson says, I want a show of Ezra training Jason. That would be really cool. And I do think that needs to be a new Jedi Order. Let's get Jason and Ezra in that. Let's get that. We're going to connect these things. I'd love to see it. But yeah, it's going to be awesome to see Ezra be a part of this family once again.
Dude,
I really hope
Ezra's
he doesn't
going to be a big brother, guys. It's going to be so awesome to see.
Yeah. The uncle that Jason needs besides Zeb.
Yeah, Zeb is a little too responsible these days. Ezra's got to tell him about how he escaped from the Chimera and made it all the way to Hera's with his old codes or whatever, right? Like there's only a reason that there was a lot of land after how Baylan enters the show is because it's something only like Hera would recognize, I would think, right?
Yeah, they were all still hesitant. They all had blasters raised.
Yeah.
Blank Name says, this was a horrible finale. In case of emergency, pray that Thrawn is not the person in charge of an escape plan during a fire because everyone will die due to how long it takes him to exit. Okay. Well, that's your opinion. I can't argue with it for that, but I disagree for my own opinion. Thrawn's escape plan, I mean, he was they were trying to attach the Eye of Sion to the Chimera. That's what was taking so long. He wasn't just waiting around doing nothing. So I think 30 minutes of trying to do that seems plausible for massive space technology when you're traveling between galaxies. But
And he tried. He really did try to kill them. Like he gave
yeah.
no chances. Like the facial acting of Lars Mikkelsen when like the bombardment doesn't work, it's the first time he's like,
Yeah, you could
and he
see
just
it.
walks off, right? Like he is steamed, guys. So it's not like he liked this either. So I think we should appreciate the acting conveying that. Even if you don't love it, at least they're definitely trying to sell it that way, at least. As like
Yep.
this is the first joust and he's lost it. Right. So I like that. Also, like this is like the galactic equivalent of Naked and Afraid, throwing a Chiss like army specialist with like destroyed Star Destroyers on this planet with these grandmothers and all this and that, right? He won his own little like political game escalation, I'm sure, against the grandmothers for them to be so subservient to him and like willing to work with him, right? Like Night Sisters don't really take well to authority. So for them to be so happy about it, I'm sure there's some crazier stuff in Peridea too, but they also saw an opportunity to grow again, right? So I don't think he's someone that had a lot. He definitely sacrificed a lot to get to this point. And then he sacrificed exactly what he needed, but he brought assets. He's a big asset guy. He's a lot about the supply chain and demand, right? He's just flooded the market with a bunch of these dead corpses. Now he's just gonna use Imperial tech, whoever helps him out from the remnant, and just wage this insane war, right? So I think
I love
he's
his gloating too at the end. Like
yeah.
it's so good.
He calls
He's
her
like,
a rodent. Like, oh my god.
and then he's like, I knew your master and I knew what he became, and it might be time for you to experience kind of the same thing that he did. I was like, oh. Then he goes, goodbye.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that was really cool.
if you don't
Dom
like that, that's fine, but that's why we like it.
Exactly. Dom Jones says, rather patronizing take on my honest opinion. One of a Star Wars fan since 77. Hey, nobody's trying to be patronizing, Dom. We're just giving. You guys are allowed to give your feedback and criticism of the episode. We're allowed to argue with you. That's the nature of discussion here on this channel. So we appreciate you sending in your questions. Nobody's trying to disparage your opinion. We're just giving reasons why we think ours, if it's different, is correct. That's the nature of arguing.
And I mean, it's usually we talk to each other a lot about comments and everything. Like we definitely appreciate what you guys send to us on our brackets, on our videos and all that. That really gives us some like real opportunity to chew on like what other Star Wars fans are talking about. That's what we love about this community that we've, taken a lot of time to grow. So I'm glad that you're here, Dom Jones. If you feel like, we were a little harsh, I hope that you also understand that like we're also just taking account of like all the things that we want to curate on this channel, this positivity, but also this openness to have like a serious debate. There's nothing wrong with your opinion. There's nothing wrong with our opinion. It just so happens is we have our biases, and sometimes we want to let the other person hear us out, right? It's a continuation. So if you want to come back and you want to talk to us more about Star Wars, we'd love that. That's the best part about what just happened here, coming to this live, right? Like you're an OG fan. We're a prequel fan, right? I'm wearing an episode 1 shirt. I'm sure the discourse in 1999 was a little harsher than we're putting it. So, I hope you at least appreciate that aspect of what we're doing here.
Sabine Star Wars says, I haven't seen the episode yet. You shouldn't watch this, Sabine Star Wars, because did anybody get left on the planet? You did. You got left on the planet.
Read your name.
Yeah, you got left on the planet. Ahsoka got left on the planet. Shin, Baylan are on the planet. Go watch the episode. I'm sure you probably
It's great how it happens. That's what we're saying. So just enjoy it.
Yeah. Dom Jones again. Have watched Rebels, and last 2 episodes felt more like Rebels than any other. Opinions may differ, and I always have to rewatch live episodes. As I'm aware, I'm not always the most responsive at 3 a.m. in the UK. Well, we appreciate we have fans over in the UK.
Over the Atlantic. Let's go.
Yeah, appreciate you watching. And again, I see you said sorry to be a grump. No, I mean we're not really arguing with you. Like well, we are arguing with you. We're not really saying your opinion's wrong. We're just giving you reasons why we like what we liked and why we're disagreeing with what you said. But you can still disagree with us. It doesn't matter. You're not going to take offense to that. That's the nature of discussion and film criticism. We're from a film background, so we're used to criticism, and
A lot. A lot.
I am not taking anything you say personally unless you come out and straight like attack me, right? So don't take what we say and argue against your opinion as personal. It's just our thoughts on the show.
We're
So
just debating Star Wars. As long as you bring something up about Star Wars and you truly want to talk about it and want to give your opinion, that's all we care about. We're just going to give it back to you as well. That's the great
yeah.
part about a dialogue.
General Grievous 19 says, hello there, General Kenobi. Dom Jones, oh, I read that already. General Grievous 19 says, I think the finale was really good. I'd give it like an 8 or 9 out of 10. Yeah, I'm around that range too. I don't think it's anywhere near the best episode of the show. I think episode 4, 5, and 6 were fantastic episodes. Yeah. And this one was maybe the 4th best episode, in my opinion. I do think it was better than episode 2, 3, and last week's episode 7. Episode 1, I really liked. I know some people didn't. So, yeah, I would probably rank them that way. I don't know where I'd rank the top 3. I would say maybe, for me, I think I got most excited in episode 6 with Thrawn, because that's the thing I really wanted to see. So I might put that as top, but I would say 5 and 6 are like tied for me as the best episode. Then 4, then the finale, 8. After that, I would say 1, 7, 2, 3. I think 3 was the weakest.
Yeah, 3 is the weakest. I like 7 a lot, but it is definitely, like we were talking about, structurally the one that could have used a little bit of like reflection, reconfiguration. Yeah, at the very end there.
A little talking besides action.
Yeah. It was fun, but it was like the Rebels filler episodes where they're just running and gunning and just doing things, right? Like how they start most of their more evolutionary missions. It kind of felt like that. So I agree. I like 1 a lot. So I would put it as 5 for, as much as I like 6 and introductions, I wouldn't have minded if we spent a little bit more time getting to Thrawn, maybe talking on the ship, maybe having like them journeying out, Morgan, her crew, to Thrawn, and the grandmothers kind of intercept them, like, as opposed to like, yeah, we're just gonna land here and it's all that. So I would put this as like my 3rd favorite, and then I'd put like a tie between episode 1 and episode 6 because I thought they were both great as like intros. But if you've been on this channel long enough and you've seen like our book reviews, I'm always more of a middle act guy anyway. So a lot of my storytelling is like usually like 2, 3, 1 in the ideal situation, and the act structure as like the coolest parts. But intros are great, right? So they were solid here. I just happen to really like this finale and what it made me feel about like what Filoni is doing as like a love letter to Star Wars in this final episode. Like, it might not be great filmmaking, but it is great Star Wars filmmaking. That's truly in the spirit of like the original stories, what he learned again underneath Lucas. So, and what he found out on his own with his own, forays into early Disney canon.
All right, K-Pop Times says, just finished the episode and I'm not okay. Baylan and the Morris God statues. Sabine and Ezra and Ahsoka being separated again. I can't do this anymore. Yeah, I know. There's so much story to come. I am pleasantly surprised and happy with how little was wrapped up in this finale, because I know for some of you out there that might be the reason you don't like it, but in my opinion, it's like I've seen Disney Plus screw up endings for these shows way too much, and I just wanted plot lines to either be completely left for the future to discuss and focused on something that we can actually end. And the thing we knew we were going to end was Thrawn escaping. That had to be the focus of this episode, and I'm very happy that was. Did I want to see more Baylan? Yeah, I did. Did I want to see what happens next with the New Republic? Sure, but like, this was the focus of this entire show, was stopping Thrawn from making it to the galaxy. Our heroes failed at that, and now we're going to wait till season 2 to see what the consequences of that were. I'm very happy there's more. I was very, very concerned that the show was just going to be like, oh, what's Baylan doing? Oh, it's just this little like 5-second thing where he hears a call and now he's dead. Oh, what's Shin doing? Oh, she's actually feeling a call to the light. Now she's back with Ahsoka and Sabine, and she's teamed up with them. Thrawn, he escaped, but it was this like 10-minute battle where he just is like, oh yeah, I'm going to shoot down Ahsoka, and now she's stranded there and I'm gone. I was really afraid. And I think that's why I like this even more than I was expecting to, because I thought there was a possibility they completely screw this up by trying to fast track and wrap all these plot points up in one episode that we knew they couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes even some of these Star Wars shows have been like, oh, watched it for the final episode more so than anything else. And like Mando season three's finale works, but it's very safe and cut to the bone. Kenobi's is great, but a lot of people are like, I just watched it for the duel and like Obi-Wan introduction and Vader introductions, right? Like people didn't really care about some other stuff, right? Book of Boba Fett, the finale pays off everything, but people don't like how it looks. It's kind of stupid in a lot of ways. Undoes a lot of Mando season two's great like separation of Grogu and Mando. Like that is a thing that we could have really spent the season and paced out a lot better if Grogu wasn't involved in these plots. Like we could still have Bo-Katan and then bring Grogu, right? Like those were options here. And I love episode 3 of the season, but I don't think I needed an episode 6 the same way. It could have been tied more into like things that they actually faced and recruited other Mandos for, dealt with other Gideon forces with, spent more time with Gideon, like stuff like that. This felt like, yeah, like a Loki ending. Like we could have done all these things, and very much happens in Heir to the Empire. But again, Thrawn, as cool as he is, as capable as we've been hyping him up to be, he is dealing and getting rid of like dead weight that he doesn't need. This is the stuff that helped him survive, but it's not the stuff that'll help him lead an empire, like,
Yeah.
Rule a galaxy and bring order and long live the empire, right? What he's taking with him definitely can bring about that. He doesn't even think that's the final step either. And Thrawn evolves constantly through the books. He's constantly evolving through this show, I think, and whatever he'll be by the New Republic will be levels. Like, forget about just Thrawn. Do we want Ahsoka after having gone through that experience just to kind of end it here? No, I want to see her now fully happy about her life, truly living again, truly connected again. What a Padawan who's truly trying to focus on making this part of their life, all that stuff, right? I want that. I want them at their next step, their next level, and seeing those steps. It's kind of how we saw the original gang. You can't tell me that Luke, if we finished Star Wars where we finished Star Wars with the very first film, it would have been satisfying to know Jedi wizards wear desert robes and finger flicking are stilted old men who can't really fight anymore. I think we're all grateful, like, of the prequel era, right? Of what we saw with Maul. We're grateful for like the Force Dyad. We're grateful for the Clone Wars. All these different things. So, I'm fine. I'm just gonna say it. I'm fine with this ending because they're promising to really spend more time and let everyone shine more so than they did this season, and they've condensed the plot so that and Ezra can be tied back into like anything with Luke. Like, what if Ezra and Luke is, and the reason why he has his blue lightsabers to like contrast a little bit with Luke and show how he's such a different Boken Jedi. Like, these are two Boken Jedi, two Jedi raised in the wild. Sure, one of them is from Grandmaster himself, but the other one is that someone who's had great experiences with connecting with Ahsoka, who's Anakin's Padawan and all these things, right? And like has connected to Obi-Wan and learned lessons and all that. So they both have very fair points of views and they can work together, and that could be a part of another show, Mando, a Skeleton Crew, whatever it may be. It's fine to take time with these guys. We had books and books. If you're telling me I can get that same level of pacing of like different book series to different book series, but with TV shows and movies, I will take that. I will take multiple movies of this New Republic era before the sequels.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. We've gone for an hour and 43 minutes. So send in your last few questions. We'll probably wrap up around an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 55. Pre-Knife says, what did you guys think of the episode? I think we've kind of covered that for a while. Pre-Knife, sorry, I don't know if we'll answer that directly, but said, I liked the show overall, but I thought this episode was disappointing. Give it a 4 or a 5 out of 10. Okay, well, that's too bad you didn't enjoy the episode. I think we just kind of detailed right now even more of the reasons we liked it. I don't know if we can spend too much more time re-outlining everything we liked, but if you'd like to rewind towards the beginning or watch on the replay, welcome to do so. But we both enjoyed the episode. If you were here for our rankings of it, it's kind of a middle of the pack episode for the show for both of us, but I do think it was a very good finale and one that answered the question that I thought this whole show was mostly about, Thrawn's escape. David Fieldson says, Russell Crowe's Baylan. Russell Crowe from recent Pope's Exorcist movie is about 60 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
He has a lot of workout time. Yeah, he looks like
He's
that in
enjoying
Thor
life.
too. He
He's
is.
enjoying life. Yeah.
And he was pretty ripped for the Noah's Ark movie that came out like
Yeah.
less than 10 years ago. So
He's kind of built the same way in The Nice Guys, which is like he plays like this
yeah,
enforcer turned PI. He has like the broad chest. If he gets to that, but a little bit more slim and muscular, he
yeah,
would be great. Costuming can do a lot, guys. We don't need to force the guy to be who he was in his 30s and 40s.
yeah. I need a good sit down and think for actors I'd like to see as Baylan, but Russell Crowe facially screams Ray Stevenson. They look
Yeah.
very similar, and they both have similar builds. So I could see it. Pre-Knife says Mel Gibson is Baylan. That could be interesting too. I don't really see that one happening, but Mel Gibson, I don't buy as much as like Wise Old Master. He does have the beard now and stuff, so I can see where that's coming from. I don't buy him as Wise Old Master as much. I was thinking somebody like because Ray Stevenson, I don't think is as old as the show
No.
makes him look. Like I don't know his exact age, but I guess late
57?
50s, late 50s, mid 50s. He was 58 when he passed away.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
he was. I think a younger actor, like I was thinking a Hugh Jackman or somebody could be good too. I think he's completely booked with Deadpool and Wolverine and all that. But
Yeah, that
somebody
physique is
like
also
that,
something else compared to what a Balin has.
well, he's not as stout, but he's buff, and
He's
he could look
buff.
like
He's
that. And
buff.
Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman's a lot older than a lot of people think he is. Like I think he's in his
Yeah.
late 50s also. So somebody like that, I think
Mhm.
Baylan just has a physicalness to him that needs to be captured. I think we could do it. Let me see how old Hugh Jackman is. He was born in 68. So what would that make him? 55?
55. 55.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's turning 55
50.
actually on October 12th.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
So similar age. Yeah. Somebody like that. That could be cool.
I just see him more strongman than musclehead, right?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
I like Ray being that brings more of his regalness, his more wisdom. Like we are saying, Mel Gibson, he could be super fit too, but he'd be more like craze cuckoo, like scrawny man types, as opposed to I am living this life that has such purpose and meaning. That's always how he felt like he was carrying himself.
And I also don't feel like they're gonna go for A-list either. Like I don't feel
Yeah.
like Ray Stevenson was a character actor. I feel like you could see another character actor take this role, somebody who blends.
Yeah.
Even if these actors would all be really good as the characters. So need some
And
time
they
and
can
research.
grow. They
Maybe
can grow to A. That's happened in Star Wars before. Just because it hasn't
oh,
happened
sure.
recently, they can grow to A. Harrison Ford was not an A-lister.
Of course. But I think maybe that's a video for the future. We could brainstorm some people who could replace Baylan. I need a good think
Yeah.
of some character actors. Where are we here? Pre-Knife says using deep fakes to change how an actor looks is kind of insulting to the actor and shouldn't be on the table. Well,
It kind of already
I
is, though.
agree. I agree in the sense that like if you don't tell the actor that's going to happen, obviously that is very insulting. But if an actor like the actor I don't remember what his name was, I'm sorry, who plays Luke Skywalker in the Book of Boba Fett shows up and they're like, yeah, we cast you because you look very facially similar to Mark Hamill and you're going to have a deep fake face over you. That's not to me that insulting because he got the job knowing that. So um, I I understand what you mean. I hope.
Wasn't he also a recast of like the Mandalorian season 2 guy too? So
Yeah,
it's like they've moved
the
on already from
Mandalorian.
the first guy.
The Mandalorian season 2 one was more Mark Hamill's height and build, but I don't think he looked as much. When you saw the behind the scenes stuff, he didn't really look that much like Mark Hamill. And then the guy they picked for Book of Boba Fett was a lot taller and a little like lankier than Mark Hamill is, but he looks way more like Luke. So there's a fine line there that they had to ride. But I understand what you're saying. I don't want deep fakes if these characters are going to have major roles. But if Luke is just like he shows up in a couple scenes, then he's there in the end for big action sequences, I'm cool with deep fake version of Luke. But if the idea is let's make Luke an actual main character with an arc and all this story in the film or the next season, yeah, I would prefer a recast. I think that just gives a little more authenticity to the character.
Even more than visuals, I want the voice to be the actor themselves. Like I know they kind of deep faked AI'd his voice, but we don't need that. Like we've already seen Tarkin with an impression, right? We can do that with the actor performing. People can do accents and all these crazy things. If it and a lot of films already kind of de-aged their actors. Like Tom Cruise does not look that good. He is touched up. A lot of actors have clauses where they're touched up in films, and that's where part of like the VFX budget goes to, right? Just making them look as good looking as possible for the shot. So we could still get like a Sebastian Stan and with great makeup, with great prosthetics, or like a wig or something, and then slightly de-age him back to like 10 years ago, like Winter Soldier era, and then bam, are we saying that's not him now? I don't know, right? As long as it feels like a closer to a Ewan McGregor, replacing Alec Guinness as opposed to, oh, this is just copy paste face on someone else, then yeah. And I don't mind that in these small roles, but like you said, bigger roles, that's where we should maximize the actor as opposed to the technology.
And also the other way I would be more okay with it is if they're like, hey, we want to really focus on these characters. Like we want Luke, Leia, and Han to have real significant impact in what happens during the New Republic era, as they really should, right? And if they decide we're not going to give it to animation, we're not going to give them to books, then I'm okay with recasting, because as you see more and more of that character, you'll get more and more used to accepting them as those characters, right? Like they're never going to be Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, but we could at least feel that they're kind of the same character. And that was what I was hoping with Alden Ehrenreich as Han. Was a one and done to me feels a lot more hollow, a lot less like the real thing than if you had 5 movies with him as Han, right? If you're starting to see the amount of production out of that version of the character that rivals Harrison Ford's amount of stuff he's been in, then you start to think of more equally, like we do Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor, like we do Hayden Christensen and Darth Vader. That type of stuff starts to parallel a bit more. General Grievous 19 gives some love for Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. David Fieldson says, in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. In the world of the horse dogs, Jedi with the T6 are kings. Yeah, they will be, especially if they've got some much more significantly advanced tech than the Noti do. K-Pop Times says, can't wait to see more live action Ezra. He was my favorite part of the show. Yeah, I think this is what he was referencing. Sanak, K-Pop Times says he called her a Ronin, not a rodent. I thought that too. I don't remember hearing rodent.
Oh,
I remember hearing Ronin, but I thought maybe I just missed a different line. But if that's the line you're referring to,
I mean, again, we've only watched it and come on here on my TV. It sounded like rodent, and I just thought it was just like him like spitting on Ahsoka, like, "Ha, you can get me," right? But if it's more of like, you're just a wanderer, figure it out on your own, right? If you're gonna do anything about it, and by then you won't be ready for me, then that's fine too. But I think they both work for Thrawn. He has moments of anger and bile coming out too.
Well, K-pop, thanks for clarifying that. I did hear I knew I heard Ronin. I was like trying to rack my brain, trying to remember where where the other line was, but I believe that's the same one for sure. And Ezra's great character, great part of the show. Last couple comments here. Before we wrap up, Dom Jones again says, thanks for chewing the cud and enjoying the debate and opinions. After all, we are all invested in Star Wars with a heart. Thanks, Dom. We appreciated the entire overarching debate across this entire show and the transition of our arguments and stuff. We always love having dissenting opinions on obviously on the show, because we kind of started the show because we have similar views on Star Wars. Even if we disagree at times, we have similar overall views on Star Wars. So it's nice to have dissenting opinions, and we appreciate yours being respectful. Raphael Quintela says, I didn't get the scene at the end with Shin igniting her lightsaber at the nomads. So I don't know 100% what that was to mean. to me, it was like I thought she was kind of trying to signal, I'm not one of the Jedi. I'm the one who worked with you guys, so don't attack
Yeah.
me. That's what I
Yeah.
thought she was signaling. Then when they cut to Baylan after, I thought maybe she was trying to signal, like, where did Baylan go? I thought those were the two things I got out of that from
I thought
there.
it more of like a call to arms because it felt like you're like a knight on a horse or like a lone warrior, right? And like regrouping. I thought maybe because we've already seen her like command, right, wordlessly to just give like a head nod and they just do it. So they whatever we didn't see off screen with their like when they're like an enemy of an enemy could be an ally, right? That Baylan kind of spins on her in episode 6. I thought it was more like, okay, you ride with me now again, right? This is like the call, right? I bring your arms up to your head and those who respect that follow me on this journey. Because I don't think, like we said, I don't think we were afraid that like they would make her like I'm gonna go call towards the light, like accept Ahsoka in this next episode after already like dismissing it the first time. That would be too quick. Sometimes we feel that the Rebels version of the call to the dark side that Ezra has is a little shortened, especially in episode season 3 when he's dealing with Maul and all that. But I felt like, yeah, we could see her chase after him. We could see her like survive on her own and like find out about this world, do her own exploration, right? She's not someone who isn't without ambition. You know, Balin's like, go find your place in the Empire. That was a big thing for him to say to her, even though he was backhand compliment like you suck at fighting, like you're not patient. But she's not obviously with Thrawn, so what is she gonna do? I think she has enough bloodlust in her to want to like rule and command and control people. So if this is the easiest way to bring people to her side, sure, maybe they can chase after Balin. If it's like a warning sign, like I'm about to slaughter you if you don't join me, works for me too. She's got some time before she really should ever even consider or ever should become closer to the light.
And I think we'll get Peridea a lot more fleshed out next season. We'll start to see a lot of the just what it means to be a nomad stranded on this planet. That's everything. Thank you guys so much for joining our discussion again tonight and for joining our discussions the entirety of Ahsoka. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Stay with us, though. If you are somebody who just found us during Ahsoka, we do appreciate you sticking with us into the future. We have a lot of great content coming for you all. So if you haven't checked out that State of Star Wars Lads video, check it out, see what else is coming. We also do have a lot more live streams planned. So if you enjoy this kind of format, if you enjoy asking your questions, sending in your thoughts on different things and a variety of topics, obviously Ahsoka is over, so we won't have something in common to talk about every single week, but we will have a variety of shows where you can talk about a variety of different things across the week. We're going to have a news show that you can join us where we talk about Star Wars news and rumors. We're going to have a show that goes beyond Star Wars and talks about some of our other interests. And we're going to also continue, as always, our video game live streams where you can ask us anything you want. Make sure you join us for all of those. We'll let you know as soon as those shows have dates that are ironed out. Stay tuned for more videos. There is going to be a recap, like an edited review of this live stream up tomorrow morning if you are interested in either rechecking out our ideas that we said at the beginning of the stream, or if you joined us late, you can catch those ideas there. Also, stay tuned for Friday. I do have a video coming out about Ahsoka and the connections to the larger Star Wars plan. You'll want to see that to hear kind of the final send-off of ideas about Ahsoka as we get here into the future. D'Angelo sends a question, asks us to rate Ahsoka out of 10. I need to think about it more. I wouldn't give it, I'm not a 1 to 10 person. I don't think something's the greatest thing. I don't think it's the worst thing. I'd say Ahsoka for me is maybe like an 8.5, like about a 4, a little, maybe a 4.25 out of 5. That's about where I'm at. I think you're muted, Cynic. I can't hear you.
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, I'm about the same place as you. Like I'm a gut caller. Like I shoot at the hip sort of guy at my scores once in a while. If I really get into a film or a series, this always kind of felt like an 8.5. It felt like closer to 9 after 5 and 6. Like 4 through 6 was great. 7 was a dip, but I still really liked it. 8 was a good rebound, but again, I need to really sit down with it because it is a lot. It is fast, and it still is teasing the future. And again, this series will be better on a binge, and it'll also be better when we have things after. So gut call is 8.5, like a 3.5, 3.75 out of 5. I'm fine with wherever it
Like
lands.
a 4.25, I think. An 8.5.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I got the math wrong on the conversion there. Yeah. 4.25, 4.5, nah, like a 4.3 at best, or something like that. But yeah. It's a
Yeah,
good time.
I think we both gave Andor a 4.5, or I know I did for sure gave Andor season 1 a
I think I gave it.
4.5.
Yeah.
And so I don't think this show's as high quality as Andor. I do like it more. Like when we do our tier list later, you'll probably see me argue for this to be higher than Andor.
Yeah.
But I I don't know if I can quite say it was at that level if I'm being a little more objective. But we'll see. I'm gonna rewatch this show all the way through multiple times. I did love it. I loved the ride. Appreciate all of you in the comments. Appreciate you, Dom Jones, for subscribing. Appreciate K-Pop Time says thanks for the fun stream. Appreciate all of that. We really had a lot of fun. If you haven't, make sure you like the video. It really helps us out with the algorithm. If you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe for more. Comment below if you're watching this on replay. Let us know your thoughts. Please join us every week for our live streams where you can just ask anything you want every single Monday. We're doing them usually around 8:30 p.m. Pacific. That's what time is worth for most of our audience over there. But if you're somebody who can't join us around that time, let us know in the comments here. And we would like to find a time that works best for everybody on Monday evenings. Thank you so much for watching this video and for joining us for Ahsoka. And we will see you all for the next video. Have a good night, everybody.